PlayStation has officially announced that PS Plus pricing will be increasing, and I wanted to talk about this from a couple of different angles. I actually had no plans to cover this until I actually looked at the price hikes themselves because they're quite a bit higher than I expected. I didn't cover when Game Pass price went up because it was only $1, and I anticipated every subservice going up from Disney Plus, Netflix, Amazon Prime, and PlayStation Plus. I was not sort of surprised when I saw the headlines that there was a price increase coming, but when you look at the price increase, it is quite exorbitant in comparison to other subservices and what they typically do. Traditionally, you get an email from someone like Netflix or Disney Plus, and they bump your plan by like $1. Maybe $2, but generally it's around $1. And they typically do this once they have hit sub-saturation. Not surprising, Sony and PlayStation are no longer speaking publicly about their PS Plus numbers because they've probably plateaued. We've never gotten public numbers from Game Pass either. We only really learned about some of their totals from some of the discovery processes from the regulators. So this is not something that these companies like to talk about publicly, especially once you hit saturation. And once you hit saturation, that's typically when you start raising the prices on the people you already have, and you're essentially testing the market. You're saying, okay, will this survive, right? Will we be able to keep enough people to make up the difference from the amount that we're adding? Like, if more people leave and churn and disconnect versus the people that stay, will we be able to then net more profit and make more money from this subscription funnel? So this is essentially my concern about subscription gaming, okay? Subscription gaming in general, I think, is great when it's additive. Like, if you're just sort of adding this to an existing thing that you're doing as like, hey, here's some games that are older to try out, or here's some game trials to try out, that then you can then buy the game to support it. I've continued to say that I really want to see an ecosystem and a culture of game trials to empower consumers to be more, informed about their purchases. I would also like to see a refund system put into place for both PlayStation and Xbox, the way that Steam has done, just for consumer protection. Because if the good games are coming out, then they have nothing to be concerned or worried about. You're not going to be running into people abusing the system or not buying your game if it is in fact a good game. But long term, my concern about subscription gaming is exactly what Sony is doing. If this becomes the primary means where you get your games, the same way right now all of us are having to basically flock to Amazon Prime and Disney and Netflix for all of our television programming or our movies, well, when they're not making enough money or they feel they've hit saturation with subscription, well, they'll just raise the price. This is something we've always talked about. My fear is that Microsoft will essentially do this long term the way they've done with other things. I can't even get video editing software now, or Adobe. You can't get Adobe Creative Suite. You have to do a submodel. And if gaming goes the path of the submodel, and you have companies like Sony raising the prices by exorbitant amounts, what are you going to do? They have all your games. They have all your stuff. You have to keep paying in order to maintain your library. The digital continuity of your library is super important to many people. If you've ever talked to anybody who has their games in Steam, they're very, very strong on this. They don't want to leave Steam. They don't want to use another launcher. If they see Epic Online services pop up for co-op like in Returnal, they get really angry. They assume it's like Ghost installed the Epic Game Store, and they get very frustrated by that. And so having that digital library continuity tied to a subservice or a submodel, I think is very dangerous. Now, in my opinion, the good news is PlayStation's identity is not centered around a subservice. They don't do day and date with their first-party titles. It's seen as more additive. I think that's part of the reason why they're raising the price so much, because I don't think they necessarily see this as central to their identity. I think what they see more central to their identity is hardware, accessories, and selling games at the full price. If you've seen similar things, I think, from Nintendo, they don't ever really lower the prices of their games and their first-party games especially, so you're just not going to see that attitude from Sony. I also think Sony's kind of playing from the front here. I think they played it safe with their PlayStation Showcase because they have so much market dominance right now. They can kind of keep their cards close to their chest. They don't have to talk about anything. They know that they're going to do well. Their market saturation and projections for PS5 are so strong. Their revenue is so strong. they're looking at this and saying, look, we're going to be able to do this, and nobody's really going to unsub in great enough numbers. We'll make more money if we do this. And that's one of the dangers of having one company shooting out way ahead or being so significantly in the lead. I don't think Activision Blizzard going under Game Pass or going to Microsoft is going to be enough to tip the scales. I worry that we have such a dominant leader in Sony that they will be able to start doing things like this with their submodels, their subservices, just really raising the prices. There's also speculation that they were really hoping to use the PS Plus submodel and subservice to bring people into cloud gaming who are not on console, and since that really hasn't happened, they're basically gearing up to do maybe a stronger push for cloud. We know they're going to start testing that in first quarter of next year. They want to get those 28 data centers up and running. And if it's as good and as winsome and as strong as we're hearing, then they've got really high prices set up for anybody that wants to get into that funnel. So I want to look at the price changes, but I also want to then take a look at what the former PlayStation CEO Sean Layden has said about streaming services and submodels and sort of the danger here, because I've consistently said we just saw reports come out that indie titles are getting less and less lucrative deals from these submodel services like PS Plus and Game Pass. And I've always said that was the concern. Once the submodels fill up and there's tons of really good content there, once Game Pass gets all of the Activision Blizzard stuff, I think that's slated for around 2025. By the time that happens, you'll see Microsoft feeling less pressure to offer such lucrative deals to indie titles, which is why I've consistently said they should work with ID at Xbox and have a place for people to try out indie titles and then buy them if they like them. That would then justify giving the indie titles less money because you're fostering an ecosystem of purchase. I think PlayStation could do something very similar with their trials. You could have an indie showcase, an indie storefront. You don't have to give them as much money to put them on PS Plus because you're letting people play 30 minutes of the game, 45, maybe an hour, and then if they like the game, they can buy it. And then the hope would be when you have really great hits like Death's Door, tons of people would buy the game, and that would make up for the fact that you're giving them less money to sort of feature their game or their product on your sub funnel. If you're really wanting to see game companies be in line with and sort of wanting to be on your sub funnel and on your sub model, I think you have to have more than the one size fits all approach. You also have to be concerned about saturation. I believe you can give people sort of choice paralysis. It's like when you go to Netflix or Amazon or wherever, and you can't pick anything to watch. I think that the more saturated PS Plus and Game Pass start to become, it's more difficult to go there and like, oh man, what on earth am I even going to play? There's too many things. I myself have found the operating system on the PlayStation and the way they position PS Plus to be rather poor. And so my response to this was I was going to cancel. I was going to like lower all the way down to Essential because I had PlayStation Plus Premium because of those game trials. Well, my renewal date was so close, what I decided to do was I could buy one more year at the current lower price. So it's like $120, $10 a month. So I was able to secure one more year, but after that, I will likely drop down to a lower tier. I'm not going to buy like a bunch of years in advance. I know people do that, and they do these weird things where they get like gift cards and stuff. I'm not doing that. My renewal date was like a couple of months away, and I thought, well, it's going to renew in a couple of months at the new higher price, or I can just slam it home right now, buy myself another year for $10 a month. The game trials are a huge benefit to me. Periodically, I like to try out games to play with my kiddos or games for Friday night with my wife. So let's take a look at the price increase. We're looking at pushsquare.com here, and they say Sony has revealed as part of the PS Plus Essential drop for next month that it's increasing the price of all three PS Plus tiers, Essential, Extra, and Premium, on the 6th of September 2023. The firm says this is being done to, quote, enable us to continue bringing high-quality games and value-added benefits to your PlayStation Plus subscription service. Now, what they fail to do is they don't tell you what they're doing to add to the value. Like, are you going to get anything more? because the price jumps are big, okay, especially for premium. And I just think the thing that I've liked about this, the thing that I've seen is the PlayStation fans and the guys on Twitter who go really hard for PlayStation and they're like big time kind of like fanboys, they're not happy about this. They're kind of saying, no, we're all either going to lower or drop down or cancel because this is way, way too high. So if you took a sneak peek here and you saw the price jumps, so Essential is currently at $60 a year, all right? And it's going to jump up to $80 a year. So that's not terrible. A $20 price jump isn't like absolutely destroying you. Like on average, you're looking at if you actually break this down, right? Because most people are doing it for the year. I don't know if you can do it, outside of the year. That's basically $1.50 more every month. That's not crazy. Like I said at the opening of this video, most companies are going to hit you for $1 or $2, right? They're going to raise the price by $1 or $2. Okay, so that's not too terrible. But then you look at Extra, and it's going to go up by $35. Okay, wow. Like why? Why am I suddenly paying $35 more a year? That's half the cost of a full price game, by the way. Like a lot of these $70 games, you're spending half that. Just, hey, here you go, for what? But then for those of us that are on premium, the $120 was just such an easy decision. It's like, that's $10 a month. And I get a lot, right? You get so much for that if you're trying out those game trials, if you're constantly downloading those PS Plus games. I'm constantly letting my kiddos try out games. It's a great value, right? You're jumping up to $160 a year. That's $40 extra dollars. And if you just go to Google, type it 40 divided by 12, it's 3.3333 repeating. So it's basically $3.33, okay? Just round it up with taxes. It's like $3.50 extra a month. That's a big price jump. Like, if Disney or Netflix or like Amazon Prime was like, hey, we're increasing your stuff by $3.50, I'd probably cancel. I probably would. Just recently, I went to cancel Paramount Plus. We had finished watching Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I was like, I don't need Paramount Plus anymore. Let me go cancel it. And they said, we'll give you 2 months for 99 cents a month. And I was like, okay, I can set a calendar reminder. I mean, for $2, we might find something to watch in the next 2 months for $2. My wife and I are watching Twilight Zone. We were watching through all the classic Twilight Zone episodes, and we were watching it on Hulu. Then we canceled Hulu because we were no longer watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And I was like, oh, let's start watching Twilight Zone again. So, $2, I'm going to get my money's worth. But most places aren't going to do that, right? They're going to raise that price, and they're going to let you churn out. They're going to let you cancel out. So I think that Sony is likely considering the fact that the people that cancel won't really offset the extra money that they're going to make, because I think they're proving the threshold of people buying and staying in their ecosystem just spend money and don't pay any attention to this stuff. And I think that's obviously kind of upsetting to people that look at this and think, well, you're not giving us anything extra. Like even Push Square makes good to mention here. Sony makes absolutely no mention of any new benefits or features that might coincide with the price increase. As these new prices come into effect on the 6th of September 2023, you have got from now until then to take advantage of the original price. You'll be able to stack your membership. So I actually went to lower mine. I was just going to go drop mine down, and then I saw, oh, mine renews in like 2 or 3 months. I'll just go ahead. Somebody's like, no, buy another year now. And I was like, oh, okay. So I renewed a little bit early to get that entire year at the $10 a month. And then obviously next year, I'll probably just say, no, thank you. I'll drop it back down. And then periodically, if I think there's a bunch of game trials coming out, like if we're going to go into like a feast or famine sort of time where a bunch of games are coming out, and I think it's going to be worthwhile to have the trials, I may bump up for just a month or something. But I actually think there's really good input here from Sean Layden. Now, I don't know where this came from as far as what publication. Zubitech has the quotations here. If you don't remember Sean Layden, I actually thought he did a good job as a CEO. I don't have any issues with Jim Ryan. I think he's doing a great job too. I can think if you look at the revenue and the projections of where things are going, I think, Sony's probably very happy with how things are going. But I found this last paragraph to be really important. He says, I think still under the current services, the platform itself, whether it be Game Pass or whether that be PlayStation Now, I think because of all the different inputs those businesses have toward overall financial stability for their business, I think there's a chance that those can turn at least neutral as far as the impact of the bottom line. So the reason he's talking about going neutral is because earlier in the quotation, he's talking about how like Spotify is massive, but Spotify still has not turned a profit. I don't think a lot of people realize one of the reasons we've talked about the submodel is going to bust. It busted for Netflix. It'll bust for Game Pass. Like, I don't think you can sustain that level of cadence, like big AAA party games, big first party AAA games every quarter at quality, and it's on Game Pass day and date on Game Pass. Like, that's a loss lead strategy for Microsoft. They can afford to do that, right? Because they have a massive war chest of deep pockets, but not everybody can do that. So I think PlayStation's probably looking to land in a more neutral additive model because PlayStation Plus is not central and they can't loss lead the way that Microsoft can. So he goes on, he says, but for individual developer who's going to put down over $100 million into a project, absent a subsidy, to bring it across into a streaming service, you're going to need a lot of subscribers, paying a lot of $9.99 a month to get enough nickels stacked up that somehow it reaches $100 million for you. And I think this is where you're always going to run into those challenges that we're starting to see emerge with indie titles sort of saying, we're not getting enough. I think they're going to get lower and lower offers as time goes on, as more and more subservices plateau and have to charge more. A great way to recoup and protect your margins on a submodel is to start giving the companies less money that you're putting on the submodel. This is, again, a reason why subscription gaming, I just don't think it's the future. I think it's going to bust. I think you're going to have to go back to pay-to-play model. I think pay-to-play models are more healthy. This is exactly why I constantly advocate for a culture of game trials and a culture of game refunds. That would push developers to create a more quality product. That would create a healthier relationship between the consumer and the developer. You're getting a more value-laden product. You're more less likely, I think, to refund if it's a game you got to try and you liked and you bought. Customer satisfaction goes up. The relationship with the consumer and value transmission is far more healthy and solid. And I think that would be a much better ecosystem to be in. I don't think subscription model gaming where you're throwing games over your shoulder, you're spending, $10 a month and you're never really buying games. I just don't think that's good for the gaming economy, and we're starting to see the cracks in the surface already. So PlayStation raising the price just too exorbitant and a big concern for the future of any kind of submodel like this. PlayStation really swinging too far. I'm obviously, like I said, secured another year, and then I'll drop down. Many people have already canceled or dropped down. Curious, what are you going to do? What tier are you on? Like, what would you do if another subservice did this? Like, if Netflix or somebody was like, hey, we're adding $3 to your package. I mean, a lot of people are worried you're going to see some pretty exorbitant price hikes at other platforms, and I think it's going to be really, really hard to keep all the subservices that you like. I, for one, am already looking at my other subservices thinking, you guys start doing this, I'm going to start canceling because I certainly will be lowering my PlayStation Plus subscription when the time comes. So, let me know what you think in the comments below. This typically rolls over into a members-only debrief, so be sure to get a membership on the channel if you want to be a part of all my extra content that I do, as well as my members-only Discord. If you're not going to do a membership, a great way to not miss out on the content and be here is to hit subscribe, hit the bell button, so I can see you in the next video.